So Mo'Nique has ended up back in the news for two topics that have already been discussed in the past, but somehow they have managed to resurface. So those two topics are, Mo'Nique asking Tyler Perry for a public, not a private apology, and her calling her husband daddy. Now, with her asking for a public apology from Tyler Perry, she has managed to infiltrate on the healing moment for Janet Hubert and Will Smith, and I think that is very much unfair. Apologies have to be sincere and from the heart. It's not something that can be contrived and you beg for it. Then it's not going to be a real sincere apology. It's like you're just doing it just to do it to save face. But Tyler Perry came through and did the apology over the phone, and that is that. He gave it to you in whatever form he wanted to, and Mo'Nique felt it was not enough. But I think I'm just resting heavy on the fact that Janet Hubert and Will Smith were having their moment of healing. And we were very emotional, and we learned new things, especially coming from Janet Hubert in terms of what she was going through as a wife and a pregnant mother and as a black actress in Hollywood. And Will Smith, he confessed his faults and what he did wrong. But Mo'Nique thought it was okay to infiltrate on their healing moment, and I thought that was absolutely wrong. What I really do want to discuss is Mo'Nique calling her husband daddy. And when a woman calls her husband daddy, it has a sensual type of feel, But in this case, it is definitely a different connotation where, Mo'Nique is calling her husband daddy because it is father figure related. Now, I want to tread lightly on this topic, but that's going to be kind of hard. So I want to be as honest as I can in regards to her calling her husband daddy. Now, I'm going to play two clips. One being a radio show interview with her explaining and discussing why she calls her husband daddy. And then I'm going to play a clip from Tamar Braxton's podcast, Under Construction, where she also speaks about calling her husband daddy, and then we're going to get into it.
Okay, so he said yes to you, mama.
Yes.
Tristan, don't start.
Why?
Don't start.
I can ask that.
Don't start.
Ask it, Tristan. There's nothing wrong. If he can call you mama, there's nothing wrong with calling him Big Daddy, right?
I call my husband daddy.
I
call my husband daddy.
Well.
But you know what? Because I don't believe in calling my man daddy. That's just my own personal opinion. But I'm not going to call you daddy. He's not going to make me feel like I got to call him daddy.
No.
But she does that out of passion because that's how she feels.
I told you
he's not going to demand me to call him daddy.
Let me tell you why I call him daddy.
Tell him.
Because he wears all the hats.
Mm-hmm.
There are times he has to be my father.
Mm.
Because there are times I'm a child. There are times that he's my brother. There are times that, so he wears all those hats. So I say daddy as he says mama. And I also say daddy because we have children. And I don't want to say your father calling you.
Oh, okay.
Your father
I get that. I get that.
Daddy wants you, so we all understand who the leader of the household is, and that's daddy.
And I tell him because he's raising me. Oof. He's given me everything that my father did not. And when I tell you, sometimes it can be so embarrassing, and it's just me and him in the room. See, there ain't nobody else in the room. And he's had to say some things to me, Tamar, that has taken me to my knees. And then he'll pick me back up, and he'll say, is anything I'm saying to you not true? And I'll say, everything you saying to me is true. But right now, my ego, I need you to walk away because the crazy out of me, she can ready to say something and mess up the moment. I know she coming.
Okay, so the radio show interview clip that you saw was from about 4 years ago, and then fast forward to now, Mo'Nique has discussed once again why she calls her husband daddy, but in a father figure-like way. This whole idea and this concept is very interesting and different to me, and I'm going to say that, like, when I've heard Mo'Nique explain why she calls her husband daddy, it screams trauma, it screams toxicity, it screams unhealed wounds. And I'm going to get into that a little later on in the video, but let's dig a little deeper here in terms of this whole discussion as to why she calls her husband daddy. Now, Mo'Nique has had 2 failed marriages. And she's conducted those marriages in a traditional way, so to speak. But, third time's a charm, I suppose. And she ended up marrying Sidney Hicks. So this is her third marriage. And so they knew each other back when they were teenagers, where years went by. Mo'Nique got married and dated and all that stuff and got divorced. And then she found Sydney Hicks again and they ended up getting married. So they have been known for having an unconventional or a non-traditional marriage. However, they were open in their marriage before because, Mo'Nique was like, hey, I'm making all the money. I want another man. Let me do me. Then Sydney's like, hey, I want another woman in the marriage. Let me do me as well if you're going to do you. And then they ended up kind of like tabling the whole open marriage idea. From what I understand, I think Sydney goes both ways. I'm not sure. I heard that, but I'm not positive of that. But also in their marriage, they're connected or whatnot. He's her manager. But the biggest thing here is that she calls him daddy. And so he plays the role as her father and her husband. Now, she explained that she calls him daddy in front of the kids, but, she calls him daddy also for personal reasons. So it's like a dual purpose, a dual reason in calling him daddy. And it's also like a cover up. Now, let's look at some definitions here. We have daddy or father. And daddy is a more casual term, and opposed to father, it's much more dignified when you're looking at the male, right? But even in that, the definition is, a man in relation to his child or children through pregnancy, or sometimes not, because there's, stepfathers or fathers that'll come through and raise the child, and they'll proclaim themselves as the father. And then the definition for a husband is a married man considered in relation to his spouse. So in this case, daddy and husband has been intertwined. So Sydney is serving two roles. Sydney is the father and the husband. And to me, this is like a quasi-incestual marriage, where your spouse is looking at you like you're his daughter. It's like he has to be the man of the house and the father of the house to not only the children, but to you too. So you see where the kind of incestual type of part comes into play. It's very odd and strange. Now, Mo'Nique wanted to run her third marriage differently from her first two marriages because the first two marriages were not working under, being traditional. So, for her to run it a different type of way, I guess, you understand, but they had the open marriage thing, but she took on Sydney as being, her father figure to help raise her. And I can see him manipulating her and putting her in a trance and pulling her in to say, hey, you have these missing factors as a woman. Let me help to raise you. And to me, that can be demoralizing. In a sense where, as a woman, I want to stand tall as a woman. I want to be firm as a woman. I want to function as a wife. I want to be that mother. But I have my husband that looks at me every day like I'm still not there. I could not function like that. Not at all. I am not that weak. Now, let me tell you something with marriages. Everybody's going to run their marriages, whatever way they would like. I get it. But it's kind of what do you do for maintaining survival and your marriage going in a good direction? And then you also have to look at the fact that people are going to come into the marriages with problems that can impact the survival and direction of the marriage. Okay, so you have people that come from fatherless homes or homes that have fathers, and either way you can still be impacted. For instance, you will have women that will want older men, that will be desperate for love, want to do the nasty in order to find love, or in rare cases they will have their husbands that will be the father figures. But women, we naturally want love. Okay, that's the way we're designed. We have that nurturing type factor inside of us. Like, we were just designed to love in a special way. But you also have men that are impacted by homes that are missing, you know, the mother, or they might have a problem with the mother where they, you know, they want an older woman, or they still want to be raised, or, you know, whatever it may be. You understand what I'm saying? But like, it comes to a girl, like, a father is said to be her first love. And, you know, that might not always be the case, I suppose. But, you know, some people may think differently. But, you know, I believe that the father is, you know, the first love for the girl. And, you know, when that is, you know, impacted or missing, that could, you know, impact her. There's some women that turn out okay without their father. We really have to, you know, put that out there. Same thing for men. Like, they end up still being okay. But Mo'Nique, at 52 years old, and she's going to be 53 soon, I'm conflicted perhaps with her trying to search for the father figure in her husband. And see, over the course of the years, Mo'Nique has grown and appeared to be this woman who is mature and poised and a fighter and standing up for what she's believed in, because I've never really seen her to be this type of person. Maybe it's me. I know when she was on Charm School, you know, she was presenting herself like, you know, a certain way. Like, okay, ladies, you need to clean up your acts. But there's something about her different with Sydney. And my thing is like, with him being the father figure and him raising her, I guess he's instilled those traits in her to be that mature and poised and woman that's a fighter, right? But my biggest question is, when do you move past your traumas? Like, you haven't had your father in the past, and I understand that. But when do you get to exercise your role as a wife and a mother instead of being a daughter to your husband? And your kids don't know it. So Mo'Nique also mentioned that, like, her ego starts to arise when Sydney starts playing that father role. Yes, your ego starts to arise because the woman in you is trying to come out. But you've given him yourself, you've given to him yourself as a child. So it's like a battle that's going on where you want to be that woman and stand alone and have your own mind, but you're surrendering that childlike self to him, like, raise me, take care of me at 52 years old. And you don't have to do that. You have to break out of that mindset. So it becomes contentious, again, where the father figure is fighting with the grown woman that wants to come out. And so, you know, to me, it seems like Mo'Nique is binded and dependent of this man, and it is very scary in a sense where, like, if Sydney leaves Mo'Nique, like, she can possibly fall. Or would she move on to find someone else that can continue to raise her? You understand? So I suppose that this marriage has worked out for itself. You know, you have Mo'Nique, who's had a fatherless life, and she has looked to her husband to raise her to be the woman that she is today. But my thing is, and I believe that the woman that Mo'Nique is today has not progressed and moved forward in the industry that she's in, and we really have to blame that on Sydney. And this is my opinion. Whoopi has even said it. Whoopi Goldberg, she said your husband is your downfall. So he's raising you, and also he is your demise. You know, it's like Sydney is the battery in her back. See, batteries die. You can recharge them, but batteries don't last forever and ever in all men. So, you know, here you have Sydney, who has created Mo'Nique to be this fake deep person. And I'm sorry, y'all, when Mo'Nique speaks with conviction and poise, and let me tell you something, that's everybody looking at her and thinking, wow, she's right. She's standing up for what she believes in. But again, earlier, like I said, Mo'Nique has not progressed in her field, in the industry. Why is that? You can fight for what you want, and I understand that. But when you're not getting anywhere with your fight, that's where the problem comes into place. But when is Mo'Nique going to realize that Sydney is her problem? That father figure, Sydney, who's raising her, is the problem. He's giving her the words and the arguments to help her to realize that she's that woman. Honey, we are in a different era. This is not the Parkers anymore. We're not at the comedy shows back in the day anymore. We are in 2020, and if you can't keep up, baby, you're going to be left behind. So how is Sydney going to help you to catch up with So, you know what? I am rooting for Black women in Hollywood, definitely. Okay, there's no other way to put it, because Black women have been through so much and trying to get roles and be producers and trying to be heard in the room and trying to get correct pay. Like, there's no denying that. And so here you have Mo'Nique that is trying to tell people, hey, you need to boycott Netflix because, they discriminated against me, for the lack of better words. No, it's the difference between ignorance and discrimination. And the fact that, like I explained earlier about Black women and how they've been discriminated in Hollywood. So then you have the ignorance piece where it's just like, Mo'Nique, you need to wake up and understand that if your name is not ringing bells, if you're not bringing in numbers, if you're not progressing in this social media era, they're not going to pay you for what you believe you're worth. Okay?
But when the vice president of Netflix says to my husband and our attorney, by the way, Mo'Nique is a legend too. Well, if I'm a legend, why wouldn't I get with the legends?
We're living in an era of how many views do you have? How many likes do you have? What type of post are you posting? Like, that's the era that we're in, and you have to catch up. You look at, some of these other actresses and producers that are moving forward in Hollywood. Like, Mo'Nique, why are you not doing the same? You're steady on your soapbox while you're wasting time and not getting money. And you have to ask yourself, what is going on? So she's ignorant of why she's not progressing. That's where the ignorance comes into place. Why is Shonda Rhimes, progressing? Why is Regina Hall progressing? Why is Regina King progressing? Why is Tracy Ellis Hall progressing? Like, why are these women moving forward among some other Black women in Hollywood? Why are they moving forward and you're not? Think about it. Your husband is going to keep you on ground zero, dang near, in a social media era that is leaving you behind and paying you in dust. While you sit here, you cannot fight for Black women to be heard and to get their flowers and their kudos by yourself. You have to have a movement. You have to have a group behind you. You can't always do things by yourself. There's people that have done things in history that have been at the forefront of a movement, but they had a group behind them. So when you stand alone, screaming alone, who's behind you to help you? Your husband? Not effective. So it's like Mo'Nique is, losing every battle with grace. So I do not understand the concept of her being raised by her husband at 52 years old. She needs therapy. She needs to move past what she's went through. If you've been in a fatherless home or a home that's had a father and you still have been impacted, you got to work through your issues, because as an older woman, you're not going to be able to grow if you're still resting heavy on the things that hurt you in the past. So guys, leave me your opinions. Tell me how you feel about Mo'Nique's husband being her father figure. And if you also want to, leave your comments about the apology that Tyler Perry is supposed to give to her publicly, or whatnot. Leave me your comments and opinions too. All right. Thank you for listening. You guys take care.